Welcome to Headphone News, International Edition for Tuesday, November 26, 2024.
China's central bank boosts banking liquidity. On November 25, 2024, the People's Bank of China injected 900 billion yuan, which is about $124.3 billion, into the banking system. This move aims to assist banks in managing rising liquidity pressure as local governments increase bond issuance to address their debt. The central bank offered these loans through a medium-term facility at an interest rate of 2%. Local government bond issuance is projected to surpass 1.3 trillion yuan, the highest amount in a year. Analysts from CITIC Securities have indicated that liquidity may face further challenges as the year comes to a close, and the central bank might consider reducing reserve requirements for banks to alleviate these pressures. This monetary policy action reflects ongoing efforts to stimulate the struggling Chinese economy and reduce risks linked to local government financing.
Bangladesh investigates power contracts with Adani. A committee in Bangladesh is investigating power generation contracts, including a significant deal with Adani Power from India. Led by Justice Chowdhury, the committee plans to hire a global legal firm to conduct a thorough investigation. Concerns have emerged about high electricity rates and environmental issues linked to these contracts. Gautam Adani, chairman of the Adani Group, faces allegations related to a $265 million bribery scheme. This investigation could result in changes to the contracts. Bangladesh is also dealing with financial difficulties, including an unpaid power bill of $800 million to Adani Power.
Protests in Islamabad for Imran Khan's release. On November 25, 2024, a significant protest march occurred in Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan. Hundreds of supporters gathered to call for the release of former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who has been imprisoned since August 2023. The government imposed a security lockdown, blocking roads with shipping containers and deploying police in riot gear. Reports indicated that around 80 supporters were arrested during the protests, with clashes reported in the nearby province of Punjab. Khan's political party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, organized the demonstration as part of ongoing efforts to secure his freedom. This situation underscores the rising tensions within Pakistan's political landscape.
French government negotiates acquisition of Atos. The French government is in negotiations to acquire Atos' advanced computing activities for €500 million, which is about $524 million. Atos is crucial for securing communications for the French military and secret services. Facing significant financial challenges, the company needs to restructure its debt. The government seeks to maintain control over strategic technology assets vital for national security. A final agreement is expected by May 31, 2025, during an exclusivity period. An initial payment of €150 million, or about $157 million, would be made upon signing the deal. Atos employs around 4,000 people and generates roughly €900 million, or $943 million, in annual sales. French Finance Minister Antoine Armand highlighted the need to ensure the sustainability of industrial activities that are essential for national sovereignty.
COP29 Climate Summit ends with $300 billion agreement. The COP29 Climate Summit has wrapped up in Baku, Azerbaijan, with a new agreement to provide $300 billion in climate finance. This funding is intended to help developing nations tackle the effects of global warming over the next 10 years. Many representatives from these countries expressed disappointment, stating that the agreement falls short of their needs. Concerns about U.S. climate policy under Trump also played a significant role in the discussions. The results of this summit raise critical questions about future international cooperation on climate issues.
TD Bank faces major compliance issues. TD Bank, based in Toronto, Ontario, is set to hire compliance monitors due to significant legal challenges related to money laundering. In September 2024, the bank pleaded guilty to violating U.S. laws and agreed to pay over $3 billion in penalties. It facilitated more than $400 million in transactions connected to illegal drug sales. Regulators criticized the bank for overlooking warning signs from high-risk customers, which created an environment that allowed illegal activities to flourish. As part of the resolution, TD Bank will undergo independent monitoring for 4 years and faces an asset cap that restricts its growth. CEO Leo Shalom reassured employees that the bank remains financially stable and is dedicated to enhancing its anti-money laundering program. This year, TD Bank has invested $500 million to strengthen compliance efforts, including training programs to help staff recognize potential red flags in customer transactions.
Supreme Court reviews Cox Communications copyright case. The United States Supreme Court is reviewing a copyright dispute involving Cox Communications and major music labels like Sony Music, Universal Music Group, and Warner Music Group. This case started when a jury decided that Cox had to pay $1 billion for allowing customers to illegally download music. However, a later judicial decision overturned that ruling. The music labels claim that Cox did not do enough to stop piracy. The decision in this case could have a significant impact on how internet service providers handle copyright issues moving forward.
Mediation begins at Port of Montreal. A labor dispute at the Port of Montreal in Quebec, Canada, has prompted special mediation involving 1,200 longshoremen and the Maritime Employers Association. Federal Labor Minister McKinnon called for binding arbitration to address ongoing tensions. The mediation will take place over 90 days, with mediator Giles Charland helping both sides work toward an agreement. This dispute could impact shipping operations and trade efficiency in the region.
Romanian presidential election results. On November 25, 2024, Romania held the first round of its presidential election. Călin Georgescu, a hard-right candidate critical of NATO, received 22.94% of the votes. He will face Elena Lasconi, the center-right opposition leader, who secured 19.18% of the votes. This result surprised many, as Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu was expected to lead. Following the election outcome, Ciolacu announced plans to resign as party leader but will continue as Prime Minister until the parliamentary election on December 1. The presidential runoff is set for December 8. The campaign focused on the rising cost of living in Romania, a member of the European Union and NATO, which is grappling with significant economic challenges, including a high poverty rate.
U.S. government boosts semiconductor production. The U.S. Commerce Department has announced nearly $60 million in subsidies for BAE Systems and Rocket Lab. BAE Systems will receive $35.5 million to boost production of semiconductor chips for F-35 fighter jets and commercial satellites, which will shorten production time in New Hampshire. Rocket Lab will get $23.9 million to increase production of compound semiconductors used in satellites and spacecraft. This initiative is part of the Biden administration's CHIPS and Science program, designed to enhance domestic semiconductor manufacturing.
Alberta company ordered to abandon wells due to safety risks. Revitalize Energy, an Alberta-based company in Canada, has been ordered to abandon its well sites due to safety concerns. The Alberta Energy Regulator determined that the company could not safely manage its operations. The Orphan Well Association, responsible for cleaning up abandoned wells, will now oversee more than 200 wells and pipelines. This action follows the company's repeated failures to comply with safety orders and ongoing financial difficulties. Recent inspections found that many of the company's well sites were in unsafe condition. This situation raises significant concerns about environmental safety and the future of energy companies in Canada.
EU and China discuss electric vehicle tariffs. On November 25, 2024, European Union and Chinese officials continued their discussions about tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Despite earlier claims of nearing an agreement, no deal is in sight due to ongoing challenges in the negotiations. One idea on the table is to set minimum prices for these vehicles to tackle concerns over low prices linked to Chinese government support. Recently, the European Union raised tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to as high as 45.3%. This move has created tensions and disappointment among Chinese trade representatives.
Pound recovers slightly against dollar. On November 25, 2024, the British pound rose by 0.4% to $1.2579 after a three-day decline against the US dollar. This increase followed the nomination of Scott Bessent as the new U.S. Treasury Secretary, which contributed to a weakening of the dollar. Previously, the pound had dropped to a six-month low of $1.2475 due to disappointing economic data from the United Kingdom, including weak business output and retail sales figures. Concerns about inflation and possible interest rate cuts by the Bank of England are influencing market reactions. The current interest rate is at 4.75%, with expectations for nearly 70 basis points of further cuts by the end of 2025. The dollar index, which measures the dollar's strength against a basket of currencies, fell to 106.94. Additionally, the pound decreased against the euro, reaching 83.37 pence per euro.
Biden administration attracts $1 trillion in investments. The Biden administration has announced that companies will invest over $1 trillion in U.S. industries, particularly in semiconductors and clean energy. This significant investment comes after the passage of three key laws: the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. These laws aim to enhance infrastructure, create jobs, and revitalize domestic manufacturing. However, recent elections have led to Democrats losing control of the White House and the Senate. With inflation concerns still high among Americans, the incoming administration under President-elect Trump may shift economic policies.
Volkswagen faces major loss on Northvolt investment. Volkswagen AG has announced a significant write-down on its investment in Northvolt, a Swedish battery manufacturer. Recently, Northvolt filed for bankruptcy protection in the United States. Volkswagen holds a 21% stake in Northvolt, and the value of this investment has fallen to €693 million, which is approximately $726 million United States dollars. This drop is attributed to Northvolt's failure to meet production targets and a decline in electric vehicle demand in Europe. Other investors, including Goldman Sachs and the Swedish pension fund AMF, are also adjusting the value of their investments in Northvolt. This situation raises concerns about the future of battery production in the electric vehicle market.
BP CEO discusses rising global oil demand. At the Energy Intelligence Forum in London, BP CEO Murray Auchincloss stated that global oil demand continues to surpass expectations. Demand is rising by about 1% each year, depending on economic conditions. BP expects strong oil consumption over the next 5 to 10 years. The International Energy Agency has increased its 2024 oil demand growth forecast by 60,000 barrels per day, now estimating an increase of around 920,000 barrels per day. This trend underscores the ongoing reliance on oil as economies recover.
Farm groups urge protection for immigrant workers. U.S. farm industry groups are voicing significant concerns about the potential effects of mass deportations promised by President-elect Trump. The agricultural sector relies heavily on immigrant labor, with nearly half of the 2 million farm workers in the country lacking legal status. Trump's administration has not confirmed any exemptions for these workers, raising fears that deportation policies could disrupt the food supply chain and increase grocery prices. In 2023, the agricultural sector contributed $1.5 trillion to the U.S. economy, making up 5.6% of the total gross domestic product. Farm groups are calling for policies to protect long-term undocumented workers, highlighting their essential role in keeping farms productive.
Indian rupee strengthens significantly in market. On November 25, 2024, the Indian rupee, INR, closed at 84.2875 against the US dollar, USD, marking its strongest one-day gain since June with an increase of 0.2% from the previous close. This rise was driven by dollar inflows related to the rebalancing of the Morgan Stanley Capital International, MSCI, global equity indexes and a weaker US dollar influenced by recent political developments. During the trading session, the rupee peaked at 84.2550, its highest level since November 7. The dollar index, which measures the US dollar's value against a basket of currencies, stood at 106.8, down 0.5% from the previous Friday. U.S. Treasury yields also fell, with the 10-year yield decreasing by 7 basis points to 4.34%. Analysts from Ing Bank indicated that geopolitical factors and differing economic conditions between the U.S. and the Eurozone would likely continue to support the dollar. The rupee's strength was further bolstered by broad dollar sales from foreign banks, particularly in the latter half of the trading session. Positive sentiment was reflected in the performance of major Indian stock indexes, the Bombay Stock Exchange Sensitive Index, BSE Sensex, and Nifty 50, both rising by more than 1%. Investors are now closely monitoring upcoming U.S. economic reports set to be released later this week.
NHTSA upholds new vehicle safety regulations. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has confirmed that it will not change new regulations requiring automatic emergency braking systems in most new vehicles. These safety features must be installed by 2029. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation, which represents major car manufacturers like General Motors and Toyota, has raised concerns about the feasibility of meeting these requirements. NHTSA estimates that these new systems will save about 360 lives and prevent around 24,000 injuries each year. This decision comes amid a rise in traffic deaths following the COVID-19 pandemic. Critics argue that these regulations could lead to higher vehicle prices without significantly improving safety.
Germany's Scholz opposes EU fines for carmakers. On November 25, 2024, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz opposed fines from the European Union for car manufacturers that do not meet carbon dioxide emission limits. Scholz emphasized that companies should keep their financial resources to support modernization efforts. Economy Minister Habeck suggested that fines could be suspended if carmakers exceed their targets in the coming years. The European Union mandates a 15% reduction in emissions for new cars by 2025 compared to 2021 levels. However, a drop in electric vehicle sales makes achieving this goal more challenging. Hildegard Müller, head of Germany's car manufacturers' lobby, highlighted the gap between strict regulations and the support needed from the government. She pointed out that weak consumer demand for electric vehicles and ongoing economic challenges hinder progress, despite the automotive industry planning to invest €410 billion, or about 430 billion United States dollars, by 2028 to adapt to these changes.
Concerns over Trump's transition process amid ethics and security issues. The transition process between President Biden and President-elect Trump is experiencing significant delays. Trump has not signed essential documents needed for the transition, which is set for January 20, 2025. This delay stops federal agencies from sharing important information with his incoming team. Experts are worried that this situation could create national security issues and raise ethics concerns. Trump's refusal to sign these documents raises questions about possible conflicts of interest tied to his business activities. The lack of transparency may also affect public trust in the government.
Trump's foreign policy plans. Donald Trump, the president-elect of the United States, has revealed major changes to foreign policy as he prepares to take office on January 20, 2025. He plans to reassess the role of NATO and wants European countries to reimburse the U.S. for about $200 billion in military aid sent to Ukraine. Trump aims to quickly resolve the war in Ukraine, suggesting that Ukraine may need to give up some territory to reach a peace deal. He also proposes new tariffs on China, which could raise prices on many goods. In Mexico, Trump intends to classify drug cartels as terrorist organizations and use military force against them. Regarding Israel, he has taken a strong stance against Hamas after recent attacks. These proposals could change international relationships and affect trade and security around the globe.
Saudi Arabia's NEOM project update. Saudi Arabia's NEOM Giga project is a major long-term investment aimed at reshaping the country's economy. Investment Minister Khalid Al-Fallah referred to NEOM as a generational investment that will take time to develop. This initiative is part of Vision 2030, which aims to reduce reliance on oil and diversify the economy. NEOM is planned as a large urban area near the Red Sea, designed to house around 9 million people. The Public Investment Fund, with assets of approximately $925 billion, is key to financing this project. As foundational assets become available, foreign investment is expected to grow. However, recent leadership changes and rising costs pose challenges for the initiative. The success of NEOM is crucial for creating jobs and driving economic growth in Saudi Arabia.
U.S. productivity trends under review. John Fernald, an economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, released an analysis on November 25, 2024, about productivity trends in the United States. The report suggests that the recent rise in productivity may not last. Fernald points out that productivity increased significantly from 1995 to 2004 but later declined. Some Federal Reserve officials are hopeful that advancements in generative artificial intelligence and other technologies could spark a new era of productivity growth. However, the analysis warns that there is still uncertainty regarding the long-term impact of these technologies. Overall, the findings indicate that while there are reasons for optimism, it is important to remain cautious about future productivity growth.
Damian Williams resigns as Manhattan prosecutor. Damian Williams, the top federal prosecutor in Manhattan, has announced his resignation effective December 13, 2024. This decision comes just before Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20, 2025. Williams is known for securing convictions of high-profile individuals, including Senator Bob Menendez and cryptocurrency entrepreneur Sam Bankman-Fried. Bankman-Fried received a 25-year prison sentence for defrauding customers of about $8 billion through his cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. Williams's resignation is intended to prevent potential political pressures from the incoming Trump administration. Edward Kim, the current deputy, will step in as acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. This leadership change raises concerns about the future of ongoing investigations and prosecutions in New York.
Brazil announces fiscal package to address economic challenges. Brazil's finance minister Haddad has unveiled a new fiscal package aimed at boosting the economy. This package includes spending cuts and was finalized in a meeting with President Lula in Brasilia, the capital. The government plans to share details with the public this week after discussions with Congress leaders. This announcement comes as the Brazilian real faces market volatility. Investors are watching closely to see if these measures will stabilize the economy.
Nicaragua passes law to nullify foreign sanctions. On November 25, 2024, Nicaragua's parliament approved a law that nullifies foreign sanctions against high-ranking officials. This legislation requires local banks to disregard these sanctions, which the government argues violate national sovereignty. The law received unanimous support from all 91 deputies of the ruling Sandinista Front Party. Critics caution that this decision could jeopardize the country's financial system and strain relations with foreign governments. This law comes on the heels of constitutional reforms that expand the powers of President Ortega and Vice President Murillo, potentially impacting Nicaragua's international relations and economic stability.
TikTok's future at stake as court ruling approaches. A U.S. federal appeals court is about to make an important decision regarding TikTok, the popular app owned by the Chinese company ByteDance. The ruling is expected by December 6. If the court upholds the law, ByteDance will have to divest its U.S. assets by January 19 or face a possible ban. This legal challenge stems from national security concerns about TikTok's access to personal data of American users. Around 170 million people in the United States use TikTok. President-elect Trump has voiced his opposition to banning the app, emphasizing its significance to many users. The outcome of this ruling could greatly impact millions of TikTok users and set important guidelines for how foreign-owned tech companies operate in the U.S.
Judge dismisses Trump election case. On November 25, 2024, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan dismissed a federal criminal case against Donald Trump. This case accused Trump of trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Prosecutors, led by Special Counsel Jack Smith, requested the dismissal, citing a Justice Department policy that prevents the prosecution of a sitting president. This ruling effectively ends the federal effort to hold Trump accountable for actions related to the January 6, 2021, attack on the U.S. Capitol. Trump recently won the election on November 5 and is set to return to office on January 20, 2025. The dismissal raises important questions about potential future legal actions against Trump and the accountability of public officials.
Urgent call for gun control measures in Canada. Advocates in Canada are urging the government to implement key measures from Bill C-21, which seeks to improve gun control and protect victims of intimate partner violence. Almost a year after the bill received royal assent, vital provisions to prevent dangerous individuals from obtaining firearms licenses are still not in place. Recent statistics show that since 2018, at least 219 women and girls have been murdered with firearms in Canada, underscoring the urgent need for action to ensure the safety of women and children. During a recent press briefing, Suzanne Zakor, from the National Association of Women and Rights, stressed the importance of these measures. Various advocacy groups are calling on political leaders to support the quick implementation of these life-saving provisions. The Minister of Public Safety, Dominic LeBlanc, has recognized the urgency of the situation, highlighting the need for immediate legislative action. That is all the news for today. Thank you for listening to today's Headphone News. News summary brought to you by AI.